Welcome to the Uncle's channel. Thanks for watching today, and let's continue our journey to finish every single Game Boy and Game Boy Color game. Today we're focusing on a game called Gremlins 2 for the original Game Boy. Now this game here has a ton of stuff to love about it. It's very closely aligned to the movie, has really good graphics and sprites throughout, some of the most charming music on any Game Boy game that I've played thus far. I mean, truly top tier, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. But holy cow, does this game go into a difficulty category in the last level for sure, but also in the penultimate level to that. And so the game is going to be finished by almost no one out there, which is a shame because there's a ton of stuff, like I said, to love about this particular game. Now I did get moved up in our queue a good bit because Bad Dudes vs. Fletch requested my earlier videos. There's a game that you would like to see me cover sooner or later. Let me know the name of the game in the comments down below, and just like Gremlins 2, I'll move it right on up in the queue. Now I can start the videos up looking at the box art for the game first. And the box art for Gremlins 2 here does have Mohawk smack dab in the center of the cover. And if you know much about Gremlins 2, Mohawk is the main antagonist in the movie. Mohawk 2 is the one that becomes Spider Gremlin toward the end of it. So to put him on the cover of the game does make perfect sense here, and it just lets everyone know who's purchasing it exactly what type of game you're getting. A Gremlin right there on the cover. Now when you load the game up here, you have the title screen, which shows Gizmo walking out from the side, looking pretty concerned because he sees the Gremlin footprints on the ground in front of him. And it's a fine little title screen, shows you who the main character of the game is going to be, but the background music or the title screen music here is just top tier in every way, and it sets the tone for a great soundtrack throughout the game. I'll let a little bit of it play right here. Honestly, it's a great song in its own right, but like I said, it just sets the tone for like every single song in this game to being a Sunsoft classic of a tune for the Game Boy. And then we have the first cutscene in the game, which basically rehashes the overall plot of the film itself. It shows Gizmo being taken hostage by the Clamp Center, put into their genetics lab, having all these experiments ran on him, and Billy from the first movie shows up, who happens to be also working at the Clamp Center, rescues Gizmo, takes him back to his office, and tells him to basically keep it on the down low. But we know Gizmo, he's a curious little fella. He begins to wander around the Clamp Center. He gets some water sprayed on him from a nearby water fountain, and 4 gremlins pop off of him, and before you know it, you have a full gremlin outbreak throughout New York City. And it's our job as Gizmo to try to stop the gremlins from, as I guess, taking over the city. It's a great little cutscene where all the animations are top tier, and it's not like some of the other Game Boy games of its era where they try to take movie characters, turn them into video game sprites, and they just look like something out of a evil horror movie, even though this is a horror movie. But I think you know what I'm trying to say here. The character sprites all look really well animated, and just a great intro to the game. And then we start up stage 1, which takes place on a film set at CATV Studio inside of Clamp Center, and we play as Gizmo, and we have a really basic platforming at its core here. You press the A button to jump, and you press the B button to attack, but you can't actually attack in any of the levels until you pick up a pencil. And in stage 1, the pencil is like literally right in front of you here, and when you pick it up, you can just sort of swing it out, and most enemies take 2 hits to kill, some obviously more, but there is a faster way to kill the enemies, and you'll find these little radios hidden throughout the levels as well. When you pick that up, you have a little music note above your head, and you can toss that out in front of you, and anybody the music note hits is a 1-hit kill for that particular enemy. And speaking of enemies, as you journey throughout the level here, you're going to encounter mice or bats or spiders, and obviously gremlins as you go. And every level is going to have a little bit different iteration of the gremlins. In stage 1 here, you're mainly just going to have gremlins walking around, or gremlins that sort of pop their head up on the particular platform that you're walking on. And so whenever you kill a gremlin, they do sort of melt back down into like a little pile there, which is a pretty cool little death animation for them. And there is also one other way to kill the gremlins, and that's going to be if you find a little toolbox inside the level. And the toolbox basically acts like star power for Mario, because like when you pick it up, you actually get like a little change in music, and then any gremlin that you touch or any enemy that you touch is going to have a one-shot kill while you have the toolbox equipped. But level 1 is almost more like a tutorial level. It shows you all the different powers that Gizmo can get, some of the different enemies that you're going to encounter, how the platforms are going to work as well. You also get Greta, who's going to be the love-obsessed gremlin, makes an appearance in this level as well, tries to give Gizmo a hug here, sort of sucks the life out of him when she does. But the level itself is a pretty easy level. It sort of gives you a, like I said, tutorial for how the game is going to be played. Now when you get to the first boss in the game, the manual is going to say that this is Mohawk, the leader of the Gremlins. However, this is clearly the vegetable Gremlin. I mean, he is throwing tomatoes at you, and in the movie, he like grew tomatoes on his skin. So like, this is 100% the vegetable Gremlin. The manual just simply has it wrong, and he's not too hard of a boss here. I mean, you can just sort of tank most of the hits if you get close enough to him, and just keep wailing away with your little pencil here, and you'll have vegetable Gremlin taken out in no time. Now, after you finish the first stage, you do get a little bonus level here, and it shows Gizmo next to a punching bag, and you can press the A button as fast as you can, and Gizmo will keep punching the little punching bag, and if you get over 100 punches, you get an extra life, and it's not too hard to get that, but this is also a reference to something in the movie. When Gizmo was training up to fight the Gremlins, he had like a little punching bag at one point, so they are pulling stuff from the movie, which I do like when movie games do that. Now, the second stage is going to be the genetics lab, and for the most part, it's going to be very similar to the first level, just a little bit of an uptick in difficulty, and also you're going to have to explore more vertically instead of horizontally in this level. And you also get a new type of Gremlin. You're going to get the skateboarding Gremlins, which is perfectly 90s in its own right. And so a cool little level for the most part. It's definitely harder, but it's not impossible as of yet. And when you get to the final boss of this level, it's going to be the Bat Gremlin, which is obviously from the movie as well. And he basically sort of swoops down, tries to attack you. And when he swoops down, you just have to hit him once with the pencil. He'll go back up to the top of the screen, and he'll call little bats out to try to come down and attack you. And they do track you pretty darn well. And so my best recommendation for him is to always attack him when he's on the far left or the far right of the screen. So when he journeys up to get ready to throw the bats out at you, you have the most distance that you can put between you and the bats, which makes it way easier to jump over them and avoid them. He's not difficult, but you do have to make sure you get the maximum amount of distance as you go. And when you do finish him, he does like turn into like a little piece of concrete, so like a gargoyle, which is directly from the movie. So I liked a little callback on that as well. Now, when you finish the second stage, you do get a little cutscene. You don't actually get another bonus level, so you can't earn an extra life as of yet. But you do have continues that you can start up inside the game. Now, stage 3 is going to be the System Control Center. And this is where the game is going to start getting extraordinarily difficult. Like at the very start of the level, even like the jump on the spring here, timing it just right to jump over the little platform to get the pencil is not impossible, but it is definitely more difficult to get the pencil here than it was in the last two levels. But as you journey through, you're going to have all kinds of spring action in this level, and the springs are really difficult, at least for me, to get to function exactly the way I want them to. But that could just be more of a user problem, because even like Mario 1 with all the springs and such, I always had trouble getting the spring jumps to function correctly. And there's one part where you're on the spring next to Daffy, the Hyper Gremlin, who's throwing out like little sparks out at you, and you're trying to get this jump just perfectly off the spring and push left or right just perfectly to get out from the hole, and you're constantly being attacked, and it's just that extra pressure of being attacked while trying to get the jump just right that makes this particular level infuriating, and is going to make the next level even more infuriating, but we'll get to that in just a second. But the hardest part of level 3 here is definitely going to be this little moving block challenge, because you hop on the block, and the block is going to go left to right around the little spikes here, and you have to jump over the block at just the right amount of time in order to land back on the other side of the spike. But the block moves in a really inconsistent speed process at the same time. And even when you get to the end, it like zooms down at like lightning speed to another spike puzzle. And then when you get over across that, it zooms at a lightning speed back to the first jumping spike puzzle. And when you get to the end of that, if you've somehow made it across all this inconsistent speed of the block just stops. And you're like, okay, so I need to make a jump off into the distance here to the platform. Well, if you do that, you're certainly going to die because you can't jump that far. And the game is actually trolling you here, because it just stops the block, makes you think like, what do I do? And after like 10 seconds, then the block moves again down the bottom left, and you have to do another little spike jump puzzle. And then it takes you off to the final little area where you can jump off of it. And so this is a very difficult part in the game. The speed is inconsistent, which makes it more difficult. It trolls you at the end to try to get you to take a jump of death here. And just a really, really annoying part of the game to get all your timing just right. And then you go through like a little conveyor belt part here where gremlins pop up at their head, shoot little fireballs out at you, and you have to like jump over them to get close to them, hit them with your pencil. And when it's like an opened area, it's easy to jump over the fireballs. But when you get like really close to them, the conveyor belt, the ceiling is really short, obviously can't jump over it, and I have no idea how to get through this part and not get hit at least once by every single fireball from these gremlins. If you like know how to do this particular part and not get hit, Please let me know in the comments down below, because I have like literally zero idea at this particular point. And then we get to the next boss in the game, who's going to be the electric gremlin. And if you've seen the movie, this is like one of the highlights of the movie, and it's definitely one of the highlights in the game as well, because it looks so close aesthetic wise to the film. Because you have this little lightning bolt that journeys around the level here sort of diagonally, and every now and then it pauses and has like the gremlin sprite made out of lightning, and it's really cool looking down there. If you hit that gremlin when he appears, at that point you've given him some damage, and then he's going to transfer over into a vertical lightning. He's going to go back and forth, left and right, try to hit you. You have to time your jumps just right to jump over that. Then he goes back to doing diagonal, and every now and then he'll reappear as the lightning gremlin for you to attack. Just a really cool sprite, a really fun battle, and probably my favorite boss inside the entire game. But I just really enjoyed the electric gremlin, because like I said, he's probably the best part of the movie. And I don't know, just seeing him again in the game was definitely a pleasure. Now, stage 4 is going to be the lobby of Clamp Center. And if you thought stage 3 was difficult, stage 4 is just going to take it to an entirely different level here. And this is probably where like 90 to 95% of players just stop the game, because they have always died in just an impossible difficulty here. I mean, it literally starts off with a nearly impossible jump, because you're on a spring. You have to jump the spring just right to jump up, off to the right, and back off to the left before you hit the ceiling in order to get up there to get your magic wand or your pencil. But every time you don't make the jump, there's a punishment to go along with it, because there's a spike off to the right hand side, and when you hit that, you're going to lose some of your hearts up top. So they made an impossible jump with a punishment, so players literally could not advance in this particular level without dying and having those game overs. And so if you finally do make it, it probably took me 100 to 200 tries to finally get the timing just right here. Give you an idea of like how difficult this one particular jump was. The level really doesn't let up a whole lot from that point on. There's going to be tons of more nearly impossible jumps where you really just can't help but take damage as you're going through the level. You do get to see Lenny and George in this level. However, you're going to be infuriated beyond measure. One of them just simply throwing out like giant rubber balls out at you. Not too difficult, but the other one's throwing out like baseballs at you. And while he's throwing baseballs, you're on a little spring just like at the start, and you're having to jump up and do a jump just like you did at the start of the level, except you have spikes off to the side, you have somebody throwing baseballs out at you. So there's like the time pressure to get it right, there's a damage pressure to get it right, and there's just simply the difficulty of getting the spring mechanics as well as timing the left and right just perfect at the end to get through these little holes. It probably took me 30, 40 tries to get this particular jump just right as well. And so to think that there's players out there in the 90s playing for this on the original Game Boy hardware, trying to go through this with like a little bit of the blur sprites as well. I think if there's anybody out there who actually did this in the 90s and saw the end of this game, or at least got to see the final boss who's coming up, you'd be one of the most legendary players that has ever existed in the history of video gaming. And I got ahead of myself because I'm not even done explaining the difficult part of the level, because there's actually more coming up here. Because you get to a part where like the screen sort of blacks out in front of you, or it has like little blocks where you can't see behind them, and you have to count the number of blocks that you've walked ahead in order to like know when to jump to try to avoid different sprites. And that's difficult in its own right, but then they add in conveyor belts to prevent you from counting the number of squares that you advance forward, so you're just making all these blind jumps, and if you mess up, you either hit sprites or you go back down to a lower level, and you don't know like which number you're on anymore, try to count the sprites. So once again, just a infuriating difficult fourth level that 90 to 95%, or maybe even higher percentage of players just simply would not be able to beat back in the 90s. Now, if you do somehow manage to get to the final boss here, you are in for a treat of a great looking final boss. It is going to be Mohawk after he's taken the spider serum and he's mutated into the giant spider gremlin, one of the best parts of the movie as well. And I feel like the sprite really does it justice here. And these little spiders are coming down as well. And you can jump on like a little spider web and you can sort of travel up there. You have your bow and arrow made out of, I think it's like whiteout in the film. You can shoot the spider gremlin or Mohawk here 4 times with your little flaming arrow. And once you've shot him 4 times, he is going to sort of light the entire spider web on fire. And you have defeated Mohawk and you have won the game. And at this point, a cutscene does come across of Billy, Hope, and Gizmo saying we've defeated all of the evil gremlins. We can finally return home in peace, and then the staff credits do begin to roll. But let's talk about the game as an overall here, because I am very conflicted about my opinion of the game, because there are some things I truly do love about it, and there are some things I truly do hate about this overall experience. But let's talk about the things that I enjoyed. Now, first off, the boss fights in the game are top tier in every single way. They all resemble the overall movie character pretty much perfectly, the overall fight pattern pretty much perfectly, even like how they're defeated and the animations that come afterwards. Like, they really did stay true to the movie for that particular part. The overall story for the game is going to follow the movie pretty much word for word. Obviously, it's not as in-depth. There's only a few cutscenes, but I like to actually try to follow the movie instead of just simply making their own random adventure featuring Gizmo. Now, as far as like the platforming goes and the action, like how you're attacking and like the different enemies and whatnot, I feel like the first 2.5 levels are really fun levels. They got great music, they got great handling of your character, just a really fun experience. And I feel like if they just took those 3 levels and sort of into the game, like most people would really think highly of the game. However, they did put that 4th level in there, and honestly I think they created the level just simply to make players have to replay the game as many times as possible, but I feel like they just made it one step too far, and they made it where no one's going to be able to finish the game. And so if they just simply toned down the difficulty of that 4th level and just sort of kept it more akin to the first 3 levels, I feel like the game would be a very high ranking as far as like a really fun platformer, because it's got everything. It's got the charm, it's got the sprites, it's got the boss battles, it's got the music, but that difficulty is just ramped up way too hard on that final level. So if I was going to give the game a score on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm probably going to give it a 6, because the first 3/4 of the game are pretty much top tier platforming action, stays true to a wonderful movie from the early 90s, but the last 4th of the game, it feels like an artificial difficulty that was put in there just to make players have to repeat the entire game over, and sort of an artificial extension of how long the game is. The game's like 20 minutes long, maybe 25, maybe 30 if you want to like truly explore every little inch of it. But by the time you actually finish up that 4th level, you probably put maybe like 5 or 6 hours into the game just trying to master that particular level. And so the artificial difficulty is always going to be a knockback on my score, especially when they just simply stick it on that last level and there's no build up to it at all. But overall, like I said, 6 out of 10. What are your thoughts about Gremlin 2? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out my other videos listed up above. And as always, go out there, find a great game to play. Simply have a great rest of the day.